What's going on, guys? This is Surur and welcome to this video. So today I've decided to talk about some few things that I wish I had known when I first started photography. So I've been receiving a lot of questions from beginner photographers that we want to do this but we don't know how to do it, or what kind of camera do you think we should use for this and that. So I came up with some few points that I mean, based on my own experience, based on my personal experience, some few things that I wish I had known when I first started photography. So guys, let's get started. The first one is a question that I get a lot from beginner photographers, which is, what kind of camera do you think we should use, or what kind of camera would you recommend? I would prefer something like, what kind of lenses do you think we should use, or what kind of lenses do you think we should buy? Photography is not about the camera you are using, it's about your eyes and the lens you're using. To me, that's my personal preference. Most of my portraits, I use prime lenses for them, and prime lenses are simply the lenses that don't have a zoom option, or you can't zoom with them. They are so stable, like the 35mm, which is the one I'm shooting this video on. It's a 1.4 f1.4 lens. There are other options like the 51.8, 51.4, 51.2. 51.2 is definitely expensive, so I won't recommend that for a beginner photographer. You can actually go with a 50mm 1.8 for a beginner if you're using Canon or Nikon. I don't actually use Nikon, but if you like it, it's fine. But I'm a Canon guy 100%. I think I'm allergic to all Nikons, no offense, but if you like it, it's fine. If you're using it, it's fine. This is just a normal beef between Canon users and Nikon users, and I'm in that deep hole, I guess. So you should always consider investing in more lenses than you invest in your camera gear, because it doesn't really matter whatever you're using. Personally, I started with the 1200D, which is a very cheap camera, budget camera that can actually do the job for a beginner. I love the pictures that come out of that camera, as long as it takes other lenses. I mean, you can have variety of lenses. So the second point is your camera settings. So when I first started, I used to know nothing about cameras. I literally was so dumb when it comes to photography. So I eventually learned. I mean, I practiced on my own because I had no one to teach me. I reached out to like many Nigerian photographers, well-known photographers, to help me with one or two things. I'm so thankful for the few ones that actually reached out to me and actually gave me some few tips that I still use up to date. I highly recommend that you practice and learn on your own. That way you would have more control on your business, you'd have more control on your photography. You can be more creative whenever the need arises for creativity. You can always be in the middle of a photo shoot and not know what to do next. But if you work it on your own, if you grow up to that level on your own, you would definitely know what to do, or you definitely know how to improvise with no matter how little equipment you have. So you need to learn your camera settings very well. You need to know how to set up your camera exposure. We have the exposure triangle, which has the ISO, aperture, and the shutter speed. The ISO is simply fake light. Think of it as a fake light. That's how I like to think of it. I mean, the more your ISO, the brighter your images, but it comes with a price. Of course, you get a grainy images that you might not end up liking, but you should stick to 800. I mean 50 to 800 ISO. It's totally fine. Some cameras don't have the 50 option, so it's totally fine to use from 100 to 800. I mean, within this frame, whichever camera you use, I believe you would have a bit of a decent images. Just think of it as dark to light. So the higher you go, the lighter your image, but it comes with grains. So the second one is the aperture on the exposure triangle. So basically, the higher your aperture, the darker your images are going to be, and the less depth of field you're going to get, and the lower your aperture results in brighter images with more depth of field, which is known to most people as the blurry background. I'm shooting at 1.4, that's why you can see, or you might see the blur behind me. This is real with this lens. So there are lenses that are higher than this, There are lenses that are lower than this. This is 1.4. There is the 1.2. If you can have a lens that has a very low f-stop, that would be far much better for you if you love taking portraits also. But in landscapes, if you're more into landscape photography, you might want to stick with a bit of a higher aperture based on, depending on your subject out there. The third one is the shutter speed. The shutter speed is just how fast your shutter opens and closes. The faster your shutter speed, the sharper your images. If it closes so fast, just imagine if it closes so fast, the faster your moment is being captured. If it closes so slow, just imagine snapping my face right now. I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but just imagine low shutter speed is coming, closing, and I'm shaking my head. So all these shakes are going to happen, in the shot. You would see the motion blur in it. Let's assume you're shooting at 250th of a second. That would give you a very sharp image. So as for me, for portraits, I shoot between 80 upwards. I go 80 upwards. When if I shoot in a studio, I use high speed sync sometimes, which is so expert. You get to know that, but that is very high shutter speed. So when you shoot maybe landscapes, or maybe you shoot waterfalls or so, I prefer going down. I go with a very low shutter speed, which gives me a long exposure, or maybe shooting the clouds, or maybe some pictures I might share with you. This is for the camera settings. Know your camera. You need to know which setting you use and how to set it for every situation you find yourself in. So let's move to the next point. This is one of the things that I wish I had known earlier. Actually, I have improved so much in my career. That was a few years back, but I still wasn't shooting in RAW, which I still regret, because I found myself, I've been a traveler all my life, so I found myself in places that if I had shot in RAW, oh my goodness, you can't imagine how crazy those images would have been. Like, I still have them, but they are in JPEG, but I just can't touch them, because I feel like I feel like it's a crime to touch them, because they're just uneditable. If you edit pictures, you would understand what I mean. So raw pictures will just give you a more dynamic range, a more versatility with your pictures, with your images. You can edit them in a very advanced way. So shoot in RAW. If you shoot in RAW, of course you're going to have very powerful storage devices like memory cards. Invest in memory cards. You really need to have good memory cards. Imagine being in a situation, let me give you a story of something that really happened to me and I still regret that night. We had a birthday shoot with one of my clients. As soon as we finished shooting, and it was almost 12 a.m. and we were trying to edit some pictures so that the client would get to post them for her birthday. As soon as I put in my memory card in the laptop, everything just crashed. When I say everything crashed, all this shoot that we had on that day was no more. Like, I was just seeing question marks. I was just totally speechless. I didn't know what to say. If you're using all these strong cameras, you really need to use a very strong storage devices. The next on the list is editing. You always need to learn how to edit. You need to start somewhere. You always need to start somewhere. I have a lot of photographer friends that still don't know how to edit. Like, they only use Photoshop, for example. They are so limited to Photoshop. I always advise them to just consider moving on to Lightroom, consider maybe editing in Lightroom and Photoshop together. Like me, I usually edit my photos. I start on Lightroom, then transfer it to Photoshop. Lightroom is a very basic editing application which all professionals, each and every single professional photographer knows at least how to operate on Lightroom, how to use Lightroom. If not Lightroom, we have Capture One, we have different other professional photography editing softwares that would truly help you to make your shots look better. A photo without editing, trust me, it's just, I mean, everyone could take that. I mean, that is what makes us different. Stick to a certain theme, learn, know yourself, know your hand, know your eye, know what you're taking, and have a theme for your photos. If you like warm photos, go with that. If you like cool pictures, go with that. Depending on whatever it is that you have, just create art. And editing is part of the process. Some people believe that editing is a cheat or a kind of hack, but I totally disagree with that. Editing softwares, or maybe editing, is just a tool a photographer has to improve their pictures. I mean, that's the only thing that makes the difference when it comes to a photographer, or when it comes to defining your skills. We move on to the next one. Practice. You need to practice so hard. You need to practice. I mean, your hand needs to know exactly what it's touching while it shoots. Just imagine yourself shooting a wedding, for example. Many events happen in a wedding. I mean, many things happen in a wedding. So much moments you could lose if you don't know your camera very well. You should know how to shoot in manual. Shooting in manual gives you the power to do many things with your pictures. So many things you need to learn. Watch YouTube videos to learn this. I'm going to try to put out tutorials as from now on. Depend on yourself. This is honestly one thing that I wish I had known when I first started. Like, I thought every photographer that I see next would just be my destiny. I feel like my destiny lies on other people's hands. I feel like if I don't get help, I'm nothing.
The destiny of a great kingdom rests on the shoulders of a young boy. His name, Merlin.
Trust me guys, if there is one remarkable thing that I would always take pride on in my journey, is depending on myself. I mean, I've had some few people help me with things, but I mean, I'm talking about the core things that actually meant a difference in my career. So you need to depend on yourself so much. You need to learn everything on your own. You need to try your best to practice. No one is out there to help you, and no one is out there to hire you or take you as an intern if you don't know anything on your own, especially in photography. Every intern needs to at least have some few basics that would just make the work easier. Photographers are busy people. They don't have time to invest so much in interns or so you just need to have some basics that as soon as you dive into something, you just go with the flow and just keep learning more and growing your knowledge and broaden your universe in photography. You need to know your why, and you need to eradicate the ideology of just doing this thing for money, which takes us to the end of this video. Go out there and shoot. Go out there and practice. If you have any questions, my DMs are open. You can drop them either on my comments, and please don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Surur Photography. With all that being said guys, see you on the next one, because if I don't see you on the next one, I'm going to vex. Bye guys, see you guys later.